before God and say, look at them that you reformulated yourself for, just for them. Look at them who you swore that they were wonderfully and fearfully made. And look how they treating you. Look at your creation now, God, destroying their bodies with Budweiser and Johnny Walker Red and crack cocaine and everything else. Look at them now, God. Look how they feel about you. Yo! Creation. And I can see Satan like that little child standing over in the corner when you get the beating for something they done, just laughing at us because we turned our back on God. Yes, sir. Well, I know Brother Harry liked to laugh, and there's an old saying that he who laughs best. Yeah. And I'm reminded of a little story about a dog named Tiny. He was a fox terrier, and he was owned by a man who owned a grocery store in a big city similar to Fort Lauderdale. Right. He was a pretty little dog, stood about a foot high, weighed about 17 pounds, had the prettiest white coat you ever want to see with a black and brown spot on it. His ears flopped down on the side and formed the shape of a V. And boy, let me tell you, he had the prettiest brown eyes that you ever wanted to see. When little Tiny looked at you, your heart just melted. All right. Well, the owner didn't have a dog, and one day he had went out to the garbage dump and heard a whining in the garbage dump and opened it up. And there was this little dog named Tiny, this fox terrier. The owner had gotten rid of the dog because the dog had a little problem. He didn't bark like most dogs. When a dog get excited, they would bark. But this dog didn't know how to bark. His bark sounded a little bit like a laugh. When he would get excited, he would go. Well, it didn't bother the owner. His wife had died a couple of years ago, and he was a little bit lonely. So he brought the dog on in. Turned out the best thing that ever happened to that store owner was that little dog named Tiny. When the master ate, the dog ate. When the master laid down to go to sleep, the dog would jump up there at the foot of the bed and just close enough where the master can feel his body and feel the warmth of love. And he also liked football games. And during football time, when the master's team would score, the dog would run around in circles, jump up in the master's lap and go. That was Tiny. Well, one day in the shop, a visitor came in to buy some groceries, and he was from a city kind of far away, like Atlanta, Georgia. And he was walking in through the store, and he happened to look down in the spot that Tiny always laid in, and Tiny was laying there resting. And so he nudged the dog because he was a dog lover. And Tiny looked at him with them big brown eyes, and he was hooked. And he just petted the dog and petted the dog. And after a while, he went to the counter to the store owner and told the store owner he wanted a few items that he didn't have in the front of the store. And so the owner had to go to the back of the store for the items. And when he came back out, the shopper was gone, and so was Tiny. That's when he realized how much he really loved that dog. He would come into the store and look at the spot where Tiny used to lay, and Tiny wasn't there. He got so depressed about Tiny being gone that he even shut the store down for a few weeks. He was totally brokenhearted because his little dog was gone. Well, after about 3 months, one day, he heard a scratching on the back of the door. And he got excited because the scratch sounded familiar. Yes, sir. It sounded just like Tiny's scratch. Yeah. But he was a little afraid to open the door, wondering and worrying that it might not be Tiny. Because you know when you love somebody and they leave you and something reminds you of them, you're a little afraid if that's the real thing or not. Yes, but let me tell you the story about them 3 months. Well, what happened was the shopper took Tiny all the way back to that city like Atlanta. And as soon as he put Tiny down to unlock the door to go into his house, Tiny said,